Hazen Carter's kitchen was alive with motion, a dance of ordered movement. Flames roared as pots hit stovetops, the rhythm of knife slices on boards ascending in the air. Chefs moved with intent, their orders firm but efficient, issuing instructions in confirmation. Marcus Carter, the restaurant's old sous chef, was comfortable in this environment. His movements were slow, fluid, his knife gliding through a fillet of sea bass with practiced ease. The thin, translucent slices fell into position, waiting their turn to be plated. Cooking had always been his refuge, a realm in which control was absolute, where emotions had no place. And yet, tonight, an unaccountable restlessness attacked him. He brushed it aside, shivering off the feeling as exhaustion. Another day that was too long, another evening that had gone too late. That was life as a chef. Hannah, his wife, understood that. Or had, at least. The chance crept into his head before he could stop himself. He pushed it aside, focused on the plate in front of him, tasting and reseasoning, wiping the rim of the plate. Perfect. Across the kitchen, Leonard Hayes, restaurant owner and executive chef, stood conversing at the pass with a fashionably attired food critic. The critic smiled in approval at a dish of seared duck, and Marcus caught Leonard's self-satisfied smile. Tonight, if all went according to plan, the restaurant was that much closer to a Michelin star. "Marcus," Leonard called, gesturing him over. "Walk me through this dish. You designed it, after all." Marcus wiped his hands on his apron and stepped forward. Pan-seared scallops, caramelized shallots, saffron beurre blanc, balanced acidity, clean finish. The critic took a bite, nodding as the flavors hit his palate. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Leonard clapped Marcus on the back, his approval evident. "You're wasted as a sous chef." Marcus had to force a smile, grumbling a stiff thank you, but his mind was elsewhere. That unease had settled deeper into his chest now, pressing against his ribs. The night continued, the kitchen an unstoppable juggernaut until the last plate was cleared, the last table paid, the last glass of wine poured. Marcus arrived in his driveway at 1:17 a.m. The house was dark, the windows vacant. Hannah's car sat in front, neatly where she always parked it. He sighed, rolling his shoulders, his body aching from the night of work. Silence within the house was heavy. He dropped his knife set on the kitchen counter, unbuckling his chef's coat. A pale blue light gleamed. Hannah's computer. The screen had come on, responding to the activity in the room. Marcus frowned. Hannah was particular about shutting it down, especially because she worked in human resources. It wasn't her practice to have it open. As he reached to shut the top, a message flashed in the bottom right of the screen. A name rolled across the screen. Liam Foster. His stomach clenched. The flash of the message seared itself into his mind before he had even digested it through. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." Marcus's fingers lingered over the trackpad. His senses screamed at him not to glance, to trust his wife, to get out. But that sick feeling, that nagging feeling, weeks mounting, it had been mounting for weeks. And now it had a face. Liam. His fingers trembled as he clicked the message. His heart pounded against his ribcage, silencing the stillness in the house. Line after line lay before him. Secrets. Lies. Intimacy. Details of secret meetings, whispers, weekend getaways at fashion hotels. A world he had never heard of, laid out before him. A receipt for a 5-star hotel suite. A note regarding dinner at a high-end restaurant. Photos, pictures of her and Liam, captured in moments that were meant to be his. The knife in Marcus's chest grew deeper with every word, every photo. His breathing was shallow and jagged. His fingers clenched into fists. The clamor of the world behind him faded into nothing but a ringing in his ears and the rumble of his own pulse, irregular, spasmodic fury. The knife in his case dropped with a metallic clang onto the floor, the sound punching through the crushing stillness. He looked down at his trembling hands. Back at the screen. This wasn't exhaustion. This wasn't madness. This was real. And this was just the beginning. Marcus's gaze was glued to the screen, immobile. The letters ran together, then resolved again, each one cutting deeper into his eyesight. His heart pounded against the walls of his head, fists clenched into claws so tight his knuckles ached. Last night was incredible. I'm looking forward to getting together again. He wished he could believe there was some reason, some innocence, something he was misinterpreting. But the truth stood before him. Liam Foster. The name meant nothing, but the words spoke volumes. His breath was labored as he scrolled on, fingers trembling over the trackpad. More messages. More proof. A chain leading back months, weekend getaways, stolen afternoons, hushed words of love. The photos were the worst. Hannah, her cheeks radiant in the lackluster restaurant lighting, smiling like he hadn't seen since before she disappeared, leaning against a man who was not her husband. A man who wasn't his. Marcus slammed the laptop's lid closed with a biting metallic clunk, gasping for air like a drowning man. He whirled from it, hands pushing into eyes. His chest squeezed as if clamped in a vice, as walls seemed to close in. For a long time, he remained in the silence of his kitchen, his mind reeling. He wanted to scream, to punch something, to wake Hannah up and make her confess the truth. But what would it do? She would lie. She would deny it. And he would be left with only his rage. No. He had to think. He needed proof. Marcus grabbed his phone and scrolled through his contacts, his thumb resting on one name. Cole Mitchell. They'd known each other for years, since culinary school. Marcus was now the owner of a restaurant. Cole had carved out another path: private investigations. It started as a side business, something to pay bills between gigs. But over time, Cole had built himself up as a good reputation. Marcus hesitated, then tapped call. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Dude, it's 2 a.m. Marcus drew a harsh breath. I need your help. There was a pause. Then, what happened? Marcus swallowed, glancing toward the stairs, half hoping to see Hannah looming there, eavesdropping. Hannah. She's cheating on me. There was silence. Then, a slow, measured response. Are you sure? I have messages. Emails. Pictures. His voice cracked on the last of these, the gravity of it smacking him across the face. It's real, Cole. Sheets rustled through the speaker, and then a drawer creaked open. Marcus recognized the sound. Cole was already up, pulling out a notepad. I'll look into it, Cole informed him. But I need details. What is his name? Marcus faltered, then forced the words out. Liam Foster. Another hesitation. That rang a bell. I'll dig around. I'll call you tomorrow. Marcus nodded, even though Cole couldn't see him. Thanks. Hang in there, man. The line disconnected. Marcus laid the phone on the counter and breathed deeply. Now what? He couldn't just wait. He had to be normal. He couldn't let Hannah suspect. If she figured out he was on to her, she'd cover her tracks. He had to let this ride, to take it all in before he acted. So he did the one thing he could do. He went up, into their bedroom, and got into bed beside his wife. Hannah was already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. She appeared serene. Serene, while he was falling apart. For a moment, he just looked at her, absorbing every little detail. Her hair flung across the pillow, the manner in which she had the blanket draped loosely in her hands. How many times had he looked at her so, and felt the warmth? Love? Now, all he felt was a sickening, hollow emptiness. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. The next morning, Marcus moved through his routine with sleek fluidity. He prepared breakfast for the kids, refilled Hannah's coffee cup, kissed her cheek like nothing was amiss. If she noticed his tension, she didn't comment. Rather, she smiled the same smile she'd shown Liam in those pictures. He almost dropped his coffee. Ava, their 14-year-old, sat at the table, texting on her phone. Caleb, their 10-year-old, shoveled cereal down his throat, in his own little world. Marcus watched them, his heart constricting. They had no clue. If he didn't play this right, their world would crumble. Hannah looked at the clock and let out a sigh. I have a meeting downtown today. Might run a little late. Marcus nodded, keeping his voice steady. I'll cover dinner. Thanks, love. She kissed his cheek, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door. Marcus watched through the window as she pulled out of the driveway. His jaw clenched. He had a feeling that meeting wasn't work-related. The day lingered. Marcus went through his day at Hayes and Carter in a daze, hardly hearing the orders, the plates, the voices surrounding him. He was waiting. At 4:37 p.m. on the nose, Cole called. I found him, Cole said. Liam Foster. Executive with Preston Holdings. Married. 2 kids. Marcus's fingers dug into his phone. Married. So Hannah wasn't merely screwing around with another man. She was screwing around with another married man. Cole continued, and listen to this, Preston Holdings has a deal with Hannah's company. They've been dealing with them for years. Marcus swallowed hard. So this isn't some casual affair. No, Cole said. This is deep. Marcus let out a sharp breath, his mind reeling. I need more. I need something I can use. Already on it, Cole said. I'll have more by tomorrow. Marcus hung up and placed his phone back on the charger, his heart racing. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, he would know everything. Marcus prepared dinner that evening as he always did, fighting to smile, to laugh, to act as if all was well. Hannah walked in and was stunning. Ava hardly lifted her eyes from her phone. Caleb stayed at the table, building something with his set of Legos. Marcus, however, watched Hannah. She kissed him. He tasted guilt. At dinner, she looked twice at her phone, her fingers moving quickly over the screen. And then as she made a mistake, she smiled at a message. Not just any smile. The smile a woman gives when she's thinking of another person. Marcus noticed. And in that moment, he understood. Tomorrow, Cole would introduce proof. Tomorrow, everything would change. Marcus hardly slept. Whenever he closed his eyes, the images of Hannah's messages flashed before him, words meant for another man, hugs that were not his, hidden moments he had been too blind to see. The worst was not even the betrayal itself. It was how easily she had done it, so effortlessly, as if life with him had never existed. By morning, exhaustion had crept into his bones, but he forced himself through the routines. He got the kids ready for school, kissed Ava's forehead when she left, rumpled Caleb's hair when he tore out the door. Hannah was already gone, off to work, although Marcus suspected she was nowhere near her office. His phone buzzed just as he was closing up the house. "Cole, meet me at the usual spot. You're going to want to see this in person." Marcus didn't respond. He just grabbed his keys and drove. The usual place was a grimy old diner on the outskirts of town, a seedy, broken-down joint where Cole liked to conduct meetings where nobody would notice. Cole was already sitting in a booth with a file laid out on the table by the time Marcus arrived. His expression was stoic, which set off another flutter of unease in Marcus's stomach. Marcus sat down in the chair opposite him, his fists already tightening. "Tell me." Cole pushed the folder over to him. "Open it." Marcus hesitated. He did not know if he was prepared for this. He did not know if he could deal with any more proof. But he made his hands move, made himself open the cover, made himself see just how deeply the knife had been inserted into his back. The first photo was of Hannah. Not the woman he'd wed. Not the woman he'd built a life with. This woman was another. She was climbing out of a black car, hair done, lips smiling softly. The date in the corner of the photo told him it was 2 nights before, the same night she'd claimed to be working late. The second photo was of him. Liam Foster. Tall. Handsome. The kind of guy who'd never had to work 16 hours straight in a kitchen to make something of himself. He was standing outside a high-end restaurant, waiting for her, in a suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. Marcus flipped to the next photo, his hand clenching. Hannah. Liam. Together. They were inside the restaurant now, sitting across from one another in a booth lit by candlelight. Her eyes were shining. She was leaning toward him, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at Marcus in years. The next photo was worse. Liam's hand on Hannah's thigh, her hand atop his. An intimacy no married woman should be sharing with anyone other than her husband. Marcus's vision blurred. His teeth ached from the force of his gritted teeth. "There's more," Cole said. His tone was even, controlled. He'd done this before. Marcus turned the page. Hotel records. Receipts. Bank transfers. That last one made his stomach drop. The money, his money, their money, was being put into an account he'd not even known existed. Hannah had been funneling off funds for months, taking from his family to pay for her affair. Marcus shut the folder, his breathing heavy. How long? Cole sighed. At least a year. Maybe longer. A year. 12 months. Over 300 days. All the meals they had eaten together. All the holidays. All the nights she had kissed him goodnight as she rolled away in bed. All of it had been a lie. Marcus's hands shook as he rubbed his face. Where are they now? Cole checked his watch. If the pattern holds, they'll be at the Belmont Hotel tonight. Room 614. Marcus felt a cold and dark something lodge inside him. He had the proof. He had the time. Now, he just needed to decide what he was going to do with it. The drive home was a blur. Marcus's mind reeled, reliving every moment, every conversation he'd ever shared with Hannah over the past year. Had she ever felt guilty? Had she ever had doubts? Or had she just assumed him too stupid to figure it out? By the time he pulled into the driveway, his anger had burned off into something else, determination. He wasn't going to have it out with her just yet. That would be too easy. Too human. No, if she had been stringing him along for a fool all this time, then he was going to string her along right back. The first thing he did was to phone his lawyer. Susan Bennett had represented a few individuals in the restaurant industry in the past, but Marcus never figured he'd be needing her services himself. I need to protect my assets, he said as soon as she picked up. There was a pause on the other end. I assume this has to do with your wife? Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, I can start freezing joint accounts, Susan said. You'll need to move your personal funds before she gets wind of this. And Marcus. What? Susan hesitated. If she's been moving money, there's a chance she's going to leave. Affairs don't always stay secret forever. She might be creating an escape route. Marcus hadn't considered that. Hannah wasn't just cheating. She was plotting an exit strategy. That made his decision even easier. I want a full investigation, he said. I want every transfer, every withdrawal. I want it all documented. Susan's voice was calm but firm. I'll take care of it. Marcus exhaled. Thanks. The second call he made was to Hannah's parents. Margaret and William had always liked him, but they were also traditional. They believed in family, in appearances, in keeping private matters behind closed doors. But this wasn't just a private matter anymore. Marcus. Margaret's voice was warm as she answered. What a surprise. I'd like to have you both over for dinner tomorrow, Marcus said smoothly. It's been too long. Margaret was thrilled to hear from him and sounded it in her reply. Oh, that would be wonderful. I know Hannah will love that. Marcus smiled, with no warmth behind it. Yes, I'm sure she will. He hung up before she could ask more. That night, Hannah came home late. Marcus was in bed, pretending to sleep when she climbed in alongside him. She smelled of perfume that wasn't hers. Marcus didn't move, eyes closed, breathing even. Hannah gave a gentle sigh, then rolled over. As if everything was fine. As if she wasn't lying to his face. Tomorrow, she would learn exactly what it felt like to have the world pulled out from under her. The morning started like any other. Hannah tapped him on the cheek, saying something about a meeting in the city. Marcus nodded, sipping his coffee, his expression inscrutable. He watched her move around the kitchen, her movements fluid, her lies impeccable. She had no idea what was in store for her. Ava is already sitting at the table, morning routine unbroken. Caleb is focused on his cereal, Ava on her phone, earbuds in place. They don't know what's brewing. Hannah grabbed her purse. I might be late again tonight. Marcus clenched his jaw and grinned tightly. I figured. She didn't even flinch. She leaned forward and kissed him, like she wasn't cheating on him in every possible way. When the door shut behind her, Marcus set his coffee down. He had things to do. He grabbed his phone and called Cole. She's moving, Marcus said. Cole's voice came through, calm and even. I've got my man on her tail. You just handle tonight. Tonight. Marcus took a slow breath. It had to be perfect. The remaining hours passed in a haze of preparation. Susan had sent through the final papers for the financial freeze. Marcus signed each one, ensuring Hannah would have no access to anything at all by the end of the evening. Then he moved on to the evidence. He printed it all, each bank statement, each receipt from each hotel they'd ever stayed at, each text message that Cole had copied. He organized it all in a large, thick manila folder and sat on the living room coffee table. And he moved on to the last. The cameras. He put them down in strategic locations, the hallway, the living room, the kitchen. Every spot she would enter the moment she walked in. He wasn't merely standing up to her this evening. He was making it so there wasn't a possible way for her to spin it, no possible way for her to lie her way out. When the house was ready, Marcus stood in the middle of the living room and breathed. It was finished. This was the moment when he stopped being the man who was cheated on and became the man who took back his authority. The doorbell at exactly 6:30 p.m. Marcus opened it to see Margaret and William standing on the porch, both of them dressed simply, their faces warm and welcoming. Marcus, dear, Margaret said, smiling, stepping in for a hug. It's been too long. William clasped his hand, giving him a firm nod. How's the restaurant? Marcus stepped aside, letting them in. Busy. But tonight isn't about work. Margaret beamed. I'm so glad. We've missed family dinners like this. Marcus smiled, though there was no warmth in it. He led them into the living room, where Ava and Caleb were already waiting. Ava was still glued to her phone, while Caleb played on his tablet. Margaret clapped her hands together. Where's Hannah? Marcus glanced at the clock. She'll be home soon. Soon. And then it would be over. 8:02 p.m. The sound of a car into the driveway sent a shiver of tension through Marcus's body. He looked around the room. His children. His in-laws. The family Hannah would soon destroy. He clenched his jaw. Not if I destroy her first. The front door groaned open. Hannah came in, shucking her coat. Hey, everyone. Then she froze. Her eyes swept the room and came to rest on her parents, on her children, on Marcus, on the envelope on the coffee table. What is this? She stuttered. Marcus stood up. Sit down, Hannah. Her arms wavered at her waist. Marcus, what's going on? He said nothing. He just nodded toward the couch. She sat. The room was quiet. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation for what was to come. Marcus picked up the envelope and tossed it on the coffee table in front of her. Open it. Hannah hesitated. Margaret frowned. Marcus, what is going on here? Marcus did not look away from his wife. Hannah will tell you. Hannah's hand shook as she reached for the envelope. She pulled out the documents, flipping through the pages. Her face drained of color. Her mother's brow furrowed. Hannah. Hannah's lips parted, but no words came out. Ava finally looked up from her phone. Mom. Caleb frowned. What's wrong? Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm. Too calm. You've been lying to me for over a year. Hannah's head snapped up. Marcus, Shut up. The words were ice. Hannah flinched. Marcus gestured over the documents. Bank statements. Hotel receipts. Messages. It all. Everything you've done. Everything you thought you hid. Margaret gasped. Hannah, what's he saying? Marcus answered for her. She's having an affair. The silence was suffocating. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. William's jaw locked. Ava dropped her phone, staring at her mother in shock. Caleb's small voice broke the silence. Mom. Hannah shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. It isn't what it looks like. Marcus let out a mocking laugh. It is exactly what it looks like. Hannah turned to her parents, pleading in her eyes. Mom, Dad, please. Margaret jumped up from the couch. She looked at her daughter as if she were looking at a stranger. How could you? She whispered. Hannah's face twisted. I didn't mean. Marcus banged another folder onto the table. You didn't plan on draining our bank accounts? You didn't plan on sneaking around in your own house when your own kids were in the house. Ava sprang to her feet. Her voice shook with anger. You lied to us. Hannah's face twisted in pain. Ava, sweetie, please. Don't touch me. Ava took a step back, her fists held tight at her sides. Her eyes welled with tears, but her voice was steady. You're disgusting. Caleb gazed back and forth at them, bewilderment in his big eyes. Does this mean you don't love us anymore? Hannah released a broken sob. Of course, I love you. Marcus stood up, towering over her. You don't get to say that anymore. Hannah's eyes flashed to him. Marcus. Get out. The words crashed like a sledgehammer. Hannah's breath was trapped. Marcus, please. Your bags are packed. He gestured to the neatly arranged suitcases by the door. You're leaving. Now. Hannah turned to her parents, her voice breaking. Mom, Dad, please tell him. But William's face was stone. Cold. Disappointed. Margaret shook her head. You made your choice, Hannah. Hannah let out a strangled sob. Marcus pointed to the door. Go. Tears streaming down her face, she picked up her bags. She glanced back once, her eyes pleading. Marcus. I love you. Marcus's expression didn't alter. No, you don't. She hesitated. Then, finally, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her. Silence fell. Caleb's small sniff shattered it first. Ava clutched him close. Marcus let out a long, slow breath, looking around the room. His family had been shattered. But now? Now, it could start to heal. The house was silent. Hannah was gone. The heaviness of it pinned Marcus down like a plate of iron. The woman he loved, the mother of his children, was gone from their home for the last time. And there was no feeling of relief, only emptiness. Ava sat stiffly on the couch, arms folded, fixed on the floor. Caleb was snuggled up alongside her, tiny hands clasped around the bottom of her hoodie. Both sat in silence. Margaret and William were just as shocked-faced. Margaret was ghostly pale, fingers twisting in her lap. William sat silently, eyes empty. Marcus let out a breath. I should take the kids up. Ava looked up, her expression firm. I'm not a kid. Her voice was a knife, one honed by betrayal. Marcus nodded. Ava pushed back in her chair. I need to be alone. Without waiting to be excused, she went storming up the stairs, shutting the door to her room behind her. Caleb sat in stunned silence for a moment, then glanced up at Marcus. Is Mom ever coming back? Marcus's chest tightened. He put a firm hand on the back of Caleb's shoulder and sat down beside him. She'll still see you, kid. She's still your mom. Caleb frowned. But she doesn't live here no more? Marcus swallowed the plug in his throat. No. Caleb's lip was trembling and Marcus steeled himself for tears, but his son only nodded, struggling to understand something too big to manage. And then, softly, he spoke. Good. That single word cut deeper than Marcus expected. Caleb got up off the couch and went upstairs. Marcus exhaled a slow breath, running his hands through his face. Margaret spoke. What next? Marcus came to attention, his dark eyes. Now? She has what's coming to her. William shifted in his chair. And then, what exactly does that consist of? Marcus turned to address them in full. His tone didn't shift. Too slick. She's been stealing from me. From this family. That money? She thought she was hiding it. She thought she could run away with it. Margaret's face paled. Marcus. He cut her off. She has nothing now. Every account she siphoned money into has been frozen. Every single cent she took is documented. She won't get a dime in the divorce. William nodded slowly. You're sure? Marcus's jaw clenched. Susan's handling everything. Legally, Hannah's finished. She has no economic leverage, no entitlement to anything except what I choose to give her. Margaret shook her head, covering her mouth with her hands. I don't believe she'd do this. Marcus let out a laugh that was almost without substance. Believe it. She has lied for 12 months. Margaret's voice cracked. But why? Marcus shook his head. Because she could. William sighed and rubbed his temples. Would you stay? Take care of the kids. Marcus shook his head. Margaret paused. You don't have to go through this alone, Marcus. His eyes landed on her, and for the first time all evening, his expression relaxed. I know. Margaret grasped his hand in hers, squeezing it gently. We're here if you need us. Marcus nodded. They left a few minutes later. The moment the door shut behind them, the quiet hit him. He'd had months of believing, weeks of taking evidence, days of planning his revenge. And it was done now. So why did it feel like hollowness? Marcus stood in the center of the living room, fist at his hips. The weight of it all crushed him. The betrayal. The loss. The future he would need to rebuild from the remnants of his marriage. His eyes wandered to the empty staircase. His children upstairs were trying to deal with the fact that their mother was not present anymore. Marcus clenched his jaw. He couldn't lose it. Not yet. Not ever. The next day, he forced himself into a routine. Breakfast was made. Caleb's bag was packed. Ava had her coffee and left without a word. Everything seemed normal. But it wasn't. By lunch service, Marcus was in the restaurant, chugging through the kitchen like a machine. The crew still stole glances at him, whispers being passed through the brigade. They could tell something was off. Leonard approached him near the pass, arms folded. Marcus. Marcus chopped through a fillet. Yeah. Leonard did not move. You okay? Marcus's grip on the knife turned white-knuckled. Fine. Leonard exhaled, rubbing his jaw. Listen, I don't know what's going on, but whatever it is, you're scaring the staff. Marcus ceased chopping. He looked up, locking eyes with Leonard. I just need to keep moving. Leonard observed him for a while, then nodded. Okay. He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. But when you ever stop moving, just remember you don't have to go through whatever this is alone. Marcus said nothing. Because the thing was, he had no idea how to stop moving. If he did, he might not be able to start again. The first message came 2 days later. A text. Hannah, we need to talk. Marcus stared at it for a long time before erasing it. The second came the next morning. Hannah, please, Marcus. At least let me see the kids. This time, he answered. Marcus, that's their decision. She didn't answer. That night, he sat on the couch, a glass of whiskey in front of him, staring at nothing. He had won. He had taken everything from her. So why didn't it feel like a victory? His phone buzzed again. He thought it would be Hannah. It wasn't. Cole, it's not over. Marcus scrunched up his face. His hold on the glass grew tighter. Marcus, what do you mean? 3 dots appeared. Then, Cole, Liam's wife just asked for a divorce. He's going to lose it all. And Hannah? She's desperate. That makes her dangerous. Marcus set his glass down on the counter, his heart racing at a healthy pace. So she wasn't done. Fine. Neither was he. Marcus leaned his elbows on the kitchen counter and scowled at the message from Cole. His thumbs were poised on the screen, but he did not type. Not yet. Liam's wife had been served with a divorce petition. Good. That asshole had had to lose everything. But Hannah? She was desperate. And that made her unreliable. Marcus knew she wasn't the kind of woman to go quietly. He had taken everything from her, her reputation, her money, her family. And now, she had nothing to lose. His hand closed around the phone tighter. Let her try something. He would be ready. 3 days passed. No calls. No messages. Hannah had gone completely silent. Marcus didn't believe it. Neither did Cole. I've been keeping tabs on her, Cole said over the phone that evening. She's been meeting with a lawyer. But Marcus, he hesitated. She's also been meeting with Liam. Marcus's jaw clenched. What the hell does she still want with him? No idea. But it's not over. Marcus exhaled sharply. Then keep watching. I will. A pause. Then, how are the kids? Marcus pushed a hand through his face. Ava won't say anything about it. Caleb barely speaks of her. Cole paused. They'll need time. Marcus nodded, though Cole was blind to the fact. Time. That was the only thing he could give them now. The next day, Hannah did. Marcus had just put a dish out at Hayes and Carter when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He dismissed it initially, but when it beeped again, he frowned, removing it. Ava. His stomach dropped. He swiped to call immediately. Ava? What's wrong? Her voice was too crisp. She's here. Marcus went rigid. What? She just showed up. She's outside the house. She wants to talk. Marcus was already ripping off his apron. Where's Caleb? In his room. Lock the doors, Marcus ordered. I'm on my way. By the time Marcus pulled into the driveway, his pulse was hammering in his ears. Hannah stood on the front porch, arms crossed, her posture stiff. She looked different. Not the confident woman she had once been. Not the liar who had snuck around behind his back. She looked fragile. Marcus stepped out of the car, his movements slow and deliberate. What in the devil's name do you think you're doing? Hannah's eyes flashed. I need to see my kids. Marcus expelled a sharp breath. They don't want to see you. They're my children, she exclaimed, her voice climbing. You can't just cut me off from their lives. Marcus's expression didn't change. I didn't. You did that yourself. Hannah's face screwed up. Marcus, please. The door behind him opened. Ava. She blocked the doorway, arms folded across her chest, her face a mask of furious control. What do you want? Hannah swallowed. Ava, honey, I just needed to talk. Ava's jaw clenched. Talk? How you lied to us for a whole year. Hannah winced. I never meant to hurt you. Ava released a cynical laugh. Oh, screw you. Hannah's lips dropped open. Ava's voice was icy. You don't get to come back here and pretend like we're still family. You made your choice. Caleb's voice thundered behind Ava. Are you done yet? Marcus turned. Caleb stood in the hallway, arms crossed over himself. His eyes weren't angry like Ava's. They were empty. Hannah's breath hitched. Caleb. He blinked up at her. Are you done? Hannah's lips trembled. I just wanted to see you. Caleb didn't move. Fine. You saw me. There was only silence. Then Caleb turned and walked out of the room. Hannah made a small, broken sound. Ava stepped forward. Don't come back. Hannah's mouth fell open and closed. For the first time since all of this started, she looked like she actually understood. She lost them. All of them. Tears streamed into her eyes. She turned back to Marcus, pleading. Please, don't make them hate me. Marcus's face was void. I didn't need to. Hannah gagged on a sob. You don't understand. Marcus leaned his head to one side. Then make me understand. Hannah's fists were clenched. I made a mistake. Marcus exhaled slowly. No. A mistake is not picking up the dry cleaning. You made a choice. Again and again. And now you're paying the price. Hannah shook her head, crying. Marcus, I still don't. His voice was firm, but gentle. Hannah let out a broken breath. Then, at last, turned and headed away. Marcus remained there, watching her depart. The moment her car rolled away down the street, he closed the door. That night, the house was still. Not empty. Not broken. Just quiet. Ava curled up on the couch, gazing at something on her phone. Caleb sat on the floor, building a new Lego set. For the first time in weeks, they appeared serene. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, staring at the glass of whiskey in front of him. He hadn't drunk it. He didn't need it. His phone rang. Cole, it's done? Marcus released a breath. Marcus, yeah, it's done. Cole's response was quick. Cole, good. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his face. He had spent so long planning his revenge, gathering evidence, making sure Hannah lost everything. But now? Now, he just wanted to focus on what mattered. His kids. His restaurant. His life. Tomorrow, he would report to work. Tomorrow, he would still keep moving on. Tomorrow, the past would be left behind him finally.